than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about fire. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family and explorers of consciousness. I am the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of King Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. It is November the 13th, 2024, and we are back doing the live broadcast tonight. Getting back into Albert Taylor's work on the out-of-body experience. Ooh. Listen, I want to give everybody a big shout out that supported the broadcast either by donations or by word of mouth or by showing up and listening. And all the people in the Discord chat for your patience. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. The thing is, man, you just don't know. I want to do a show. I plan on doing a show about time travel this week, but I want to do a show about time. Listen, when you take on a bunch of stuff, you're being an idiot. Like, that's what I've done. I've taken on a bunch of stuff, and it's caused me to have to reevaluate things and change my schedule a bit. Last night, I'd done one of the dumbest, most disrespectful things to myself I've ever done online. I was so tired, I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I put in the that second part of the broadcast. And I don't know if you've ever been so tired where you you just can't, like, there's nothing fighting it, man. You're going down, right? So I went down last night, and it was funny. I woke up, and it was about 13 minutes of live. Never done this before in all my years of doing this. About 13 minutes of dead silence. I was in dreamland, actually. Kind of cool when you think about it, you know, that I was actually dreaming while the broadcast was live. But I don't remember what the hell the dream was about. I know it didn't make sense. What's up, Susie, Jenny? Is that Trey Sucks? What's up, Trey Sucks? Ari the Cat, Sir Wolf, MJ Dutchy, and all the lurkers and all the people on the radio station. You can call in tonight at 501-777-5631, regardless of what we are talking about. The calls are unscreened, open. You never know what's going to happen, and it's free to interrupt. I personally don't care, as long as it's relative to what we're talking about. And that has to kind of matter, you know. So as we take this journey through the out-of-body experience and these, I guess you could say, heavy hitters, what I would consider as the more reliable stories of the out-of-body experience, in my opinion, I'm hoping by the time that when we get done with this, we'll all have some form of an education based on what we know. And I take that term education very lightly because as much as we have traveled out of body, and I would even say as much as everyone's traveled out of body, that's Monroe, everybody included. I think we've only, this is just my opinion, but I think we've only discovered about this much, just a little bit. I think there's so much more to be discovered. Now, in Albert Taylor's book, he goes on after the dates of his journal and in his chapter 4, and it's called A Change in Perspective. And this is what I like, actually. I like to see and hear everybody's perspective. So if you take Muldoon, no religion involved whatsoever. Not so much of a scientific approach, but he definitely had his own rules about things. And you could tell that he's been in his etheric body many times. You take Monroe, more of a scientific approach. You can tell he's definitely been in his etheric body, but when it came to the second and third books, I mean, he went out there. He had some crazy adventures, right? Robert Bruce in Astral Dynamics, more focused on the energy of the subtle body, which he believes that we have. His book is deeply focused on that. And in this book, in Albert Taylor's book that we're covering, it seems to me that his focus is kind of leaned towards, through his experiences, that there are guides that are always there with us, helping us through this out-of-body experience, or a guide. And so in his book, he has all these quotes that relate to religion. And what I'm trying to get you to see is even the best conscious explorers on the planet still have somewhat of a belief or a bias in what they're doing. How hard is it for us to not do this as human beings? I think it's almost impossible for us to not start to develop some kind of belief or some kind of set system. As people go on, it's almost like it's impossible to fight that idea in our minds that we need to figure this out and create a formula, something that we can understand. So, a change in perspective, Albert Taylor says. When lost in the mental judges of confusion and fear, realize that God knows the way out. That's a quote by Joseph Murphy. He goes on to say that the effect the out-of-body experiences and metaphysical literature has had on me has been lasting, even as early as April of 1993, shortly after I started. Several impressions became a permanent part of my consciousness. The first is that I no longer have a fear of death. I never dwelled on it before, but death lost its sense of finality. I believe there is a hereafter, and whatever defines me as me will consciously survive. My relationship with Ions and Rosanna has strengthened this belief tremendously, and I've heard numerous first-hand accounts of near-death experiences, and to me, they appear to be akin to my journeys. However, I have not died. And unlike what I've heard about the near-death experience, I seem to have more control over my travels. Most of the time, I can choose where to go and when to return. I also have what I describe as a knowing that has stayed with me since nearly the beginning. I am convinced that the lack of a physical body is my timeless natural state, and existing with a physical body is as temporary as a dream. During that early out-of-body experience in April of 1993, something happened that forever changed me. While I floated there above my body, all of a sudden I felt as if my consciousness was somehow opened up, and information about everything was abruptly poured in. For the first time in my life, I had absolutely no questions about anything. For a fleeting period of time, I felt that I knew everything. Like you got a download, right? Suddenly, the ups and downs of the Earth life's system made sense. All the mysteries, frustrations, disappointments, and miracles all had a distinct purpose. I didn't know it at the time, but later I would be told that I may have had what metaphysicians refer to as a Kundalini experience. And while I was in the midst of this phenomenon, I had the overwhelming feeling of finally being home. Not in the physical state, but in a consciousness state. This I refer to as soul consciousness. One of the primary lasting byproducts of this soul consciousness is losing the fear of death and realizing that although I am on this earth, I am not of it. And moreover, I and we are incredible and powerful spiritual beings having a human experience, and not just humans having a limited experience or a limited spiritual experience. I think I've heard someone say that before. Where humans having an incredible, or spirits having an incredible human experience, not just humans having a limited spiritual experience. Isn't that funny how the play of opposites always is working out in reality? My current relationships with everyone around me, close relatives, friends, and strangers, are more open, honest, and caring, unlike anything I've previously thought probable. My wife and friends have repeatedly referred to me as a spiritual guide, and I take this as a great compliment, although I don't agree. I do know I have shared my insights into problems or self-defeating behaviors with others, and that seem to have helped them. And sometimes my suggestion consists of a different way of looking at a situation. The strangest part about the insights is I have no idea where the information comes from. And in most cases, the guidance I've offered is news to me too. I do not make predictions or anything of that sort, just observations that appear to be very clear to me. On several occasions, I have applied the new insights to my own life with positive results, and this remains an enigma, at least to me. I was invited by my friend Kim to explore my imagination in a slightly different manner. Kim invited me to attend a past life regression experiment conducted by a prominent hypnotherapist in Newport Beach, California. My relationship with Kim is a little unusual. She feels almost like a sister, and this I find strange because I have no siblings and I have never wished for any, but there is a bond that has been apparent to me from our initial meeting. And still, when I drove to Newport Beach, I kept asking myself, why are you doing this? This is a waste of time and money. Turn around while you still can. What does this have to do with the out-of-body experience anyway? When we arrived, Kim explained how she'd done this before with remarkable results. We walked to a nearby house, knocked on the door, and a middle-aged woman opened it and greeted us with a smile. "Welcome, I'm Dr. Carboni," she said, turning for us to follow. "We're just about to get started," she grinned as we climbed the staircase. We entered a small but cozy den where 6 other people were already seated. We exchanged greetings, then found our chairs, and Kim and I were seated on the opposite ends of the room, and I felt a little silly and sat there staring at Kim. The doctor explained to us what was to come and said we should relax and follow her instructions. That's a little weird, don't you think? Just jumping in, hey, let's go do a past life regression, then you jump into a room and there's like 6 people just chilling. What's up, Word Salad? Jane, Will C. Did I say hi to Dutchie and MJ? What's up? The doctor started a tape of pre-recorded music and began to lead us towards a light hypnotic state. I relaxed my body with relative ease, almost like preparing for a soul journey. And after ensuring that the participants were thoroughly relaxed, the doctor began to describe a forest with tall, swaying trees. And in the forest, she described a long, winding path, and she directed us to follow it. At the end of the path was a house, one that we had lived in during a past life. I have a pretty active imagination, so I gave into her prompting and made an effort to visualize this abode. In my mind's eye grew an image of a white and brown German cottage with darker brown shutters. Following her guidance, I moved to the door, opened it, and walked in. I could see a half-circular staircase on the left and a dining area toward the right. This is hard for me because I've done a past life regression, and I'm thinking about. I mean, honestly, you may be straight up with you. I'm thinking about the validity of it. Notice, I'm not saying that there's nothing to it, but notice how he said he immediately just started following her directions. I wonder sometimes, because I'm fascinated by hypnotism. I think hypnotism reveals a lot about the subconscious in the human mind. And I wonder sometimes, and we're going to learn something here, I'm sure, by but Albert's experience. But I wonder sometimes if, not that we want to be hypnotized, but there's something there in hypnotism that shows us the power of the subconscious, and not just the power of it, but like how it works with the metaphysical realm. But there's always that voice in the back of your head going, am I making this up? Just because, like, I feel so prompted to answer these questions or do exactly what they say. And the brain is incredible at making up stuff super fast. And just how real it seems. And then that gets into the whole other nature of the question of reality. But let's see what happens with him. So he says, I could see a half-circular staircase on the left and a dining area toward the right. I moved to the dining table and observed neatly placed pewter dishes. I was intrigued by this because Dr. Carboni stopped verbally directing us after I entered the doorway. I noticed a warm, flickering glow radiating from the fireplace. I turned and walked over to the staircase. I climbed quickly and entered one of the bedrooms at the top of the stairs. Inside on the left wall was a closet that stood out from the wall and was supported by short wooden legs. I opened the closet and found it filled with women's clothes. Then a strange feeling swept over me. I had an instinctive impression that the clothes were mine. This was getting weird. Dr. Carboni cut in, you are leaving that life through a long tunnel, and as you emerge on the other side, you will be in a life previous to the one that we just visited. I found myself standing on a snow-covered mountainside studded with tall trees. Smoke from nearby campfires permeated the air. But I sensed something else. People were moaning. No, people were dying. No, my people were dying. We were starving. I looked down at my feet, which were shod in furry, knee-high, crudely crafted boots. This was way too much. I looked up from my boots to see some of the dead being carried away on two parallel poles drawn by horses. Then it suddenly hit me. My people were dying because the cavalry had driven us away from our homeland and into the mountains. I want you to go to the last day of that life, Dr. Carboni interjected. And suddenly I was lying down, covered by thick furs. I had been mortally wounded during a one-sided battle. We had returned to fight for our land, the land of our fathers. We didn't have a chance and were brutally slaughtered. I looked around, and I was in a circular, pointed room with a fire burning in the center. A flap of hide at the top was partially open to let the rising smoke escape. At the count of 5, I want you to return to this life. Dr. Carboni interrupted, you are healthy and whole. 1, 2, 3, 4. I sat up slowly thinking, what a great imagination I have. Exactly, that's what I would have thought too. I just made all that up. Like the dead coming back to life, the other time travelers began to stretch and yawn. Dr. Carboni looked straight at me, so tell us about your experience. Did anything happen? No. I was just using my imagination. Wasn't I? Please don't be shy. Tell us, insisted Dr. Carboni. Reluctantly, I shared my story, but only included bits and pieces with very few details. And while I spoke, I couldn't help but notice Kim staring at me with a blank look and her mouth was wide open. What's with her, I thought. I didn't think my story was that interesting. I quickly ended my tale and relinquished the podium. The good doctor thanked me for sharing. Kim was still staring at me. Had I made a fool of myself? Before long, the doctor asked Kim about her experiences. Kim's stare finally broke off. Kim began to tell the exact same story as mine. While I listened, I felt very disappointed in her. Why would she blatantly copy my imaginary story? Was she trying to give my story some validity to keep me from regretting this entire venture? I swear on everything, I would have thought the exact same thing. Like, I would have thought she's just being nice or something, right? So as she described the table settings inside the cottage, then the radiant fire and the large wooden dining table, I thought, wait a minute, I hadn't shared that part of the story. Was this just a lucky guess? But no, the details were far too elaborate. Kim then began to describe her reincarnated life after the German one. She pictured the snow scene in the mountains, but from a slightly different perspective. She told of the starvation, the dead being dragged off on 2 poles. Hold on a minute, I'd completely left that part out. My mouth dropped open. Now it was my turn to stare at her. And Kim continued to describe events and details that I had imagined but not shared. I was at a loss. All right, so here's the thing, right? Like, if she's telling the truth, what's up, Grant? What's up, Cosmic? If they're telling the truth, and we have no reason to believe that they're not, then it has to be real. There's no other logical explanation as to why they would talk about those details like that together. If he's telling the truth about the fact that he left those parts out, she picked it up. If she's telling the truth, all this stuff, right? That means through his experience that, I don't know, let's finish it before we discuss it, because this is crazy. After the session ended, Kim and I continued to compare our experiences. We were both shocked. I don't believe in reincarnation, I said. At least I thought I didn't. Was there some logical explanation? How could we share the same daydream? Kim began to tell me how more times than not souls somehow reincarnate together lifetime after lifetime. Well, I never would have guessed that I could leave my body and fly all over creation. Maybe reincarnation is possible. And sometimes later I would discover that, like vibrational souls, somehow reincarnate with each other over and over again. I now believe that Kim and I, for some reason, fit into this category. Are we here to assist each other through this school of life? Thinking back, I see that Kim has helped steer me into more than a few opportunities for spiritual growth, and I hope I've done the same for her. Holy crap. I wish I could have that. I mean, I've had an out-of-body experience on several occasions, still do to this day, but I have doubts, man. But if I was to have something like that happen, that would immediately, I mean, something like that would immediately cease your fear of death, right? I'm just saying, that's an incredible experience that he had. You know, because everything that I've ever done or experienced, it's left some doubt. No matter how vivid the experience, there's always been some kind of doubt. Even the past life regression that I did, I had nobody to back up my story. But if you had somebody there to back up your story, like he's talking about, man, think about how your whole, I mean, he already knows about consciousness because he's had an out-of-body experience, but can you imagine how his whole paradigm had shifted at that point? So, the next part, a relative encounter. Life is a state of becoming, and death is merely a part of the process. Jane Roberts. During one of my out-of-body flights in mid-1994, I was drawn to a location I can only describe as a meeting place. I do not believe this place is physical. If it is, it's not on Earth. At least twice, I have felt an irresistible urge to blink out and follow its magnetic pull. When in this location, I felt overwhelmed by the countless entities seemingly milling around. These beings paid very little attention, if any, to me. I wondered if this was an entity's self-created pseudo-reality, or I was in the midst of hundreds of entities. Oddly, I felt only a little fearful. I scanned the crowd and was puzzled as to why they were here, wherever here was. Yeah, this is crazy. A meeting place. Suddenly I recognized the face of a being a short distance away, looking directly at me. I thought, no way, it couldn't be her. The entity bore a striking resemblance to my late Aunt Vera. Why would I see her? I haven't thought of her in years. I almost never think of her. Aunt Vera was my mother's sister who died of cancer in August of 1982. I was very close to her in my youth, but we had grown distant during most of my adult life. Now here was my aunt, standing floating directly in front of me. I felt fear rear its ugly head. If this is her, I thought, then she's the first spirit whom I knew and who lived and died in my lifetime. I was a pallbearer at her funeral, and this encounter unleashed a flood of emotions that I could not handle. I thought of my body and retreated for home at warp speed. When I reconnected, I was dazed by what had occurred. Should I tell my mother I saw her deceased youngest sister? Was it really her? She did appear to recognize me, while the other beings paid no attention. A few days later, I slipped free of my body and took off at a local sortie. What is that? I took off on a local sortie. What is a sortie? I don't know. As soon as I experienced that magnetic pull again and I followed it, I arrived and found the multitudes the same as before, but this time I had one person on my mind, my aunt. As if responding to a page there a short distance away appeared Aunt Vera, and this time she slowly approached me. With 2 parts courage and 1 part fear, I curiously inquired, Aunt Vera, are you dead? Yes, I am, she said, smiling at me. I stared at her, perplexed. Yes, it was her, and a part of me knew it. I could also feel an intense sensation of love emanating from her. I felt a need to return to my body, focused my thoughts, and sped off. And after reconnecting, I reflected on what had occurred and realized that the ever-present fear of spirits had diminished dramatically. Through Aunt Vera, I understood a little more about them somehow and was comforted. This strange current running among families was illustrated in a more dramatic way in early October of 1994. At this time, my wife and I had been following her uncle's progress after surviving surgery that removed a grapefruit-sized tumor from his chest. My wife's uncle was now in critical condition in a Los Angeles hospital. On October 7th at 10:15 p.m., the phone rang once. My wife answered, and by the sound of her voice, I knew the inevitable had happened. Her uncle was free from suffering at last. I comforted my wife the best I could until she drifted off to sleep, and as I relaxed beside her, I wondered if it was too soon to attempt an encounter with her uncle. Was it even possible? I decided to try and focus my thoughts on him as much as I could. I did the preparatory techniques, relaxed, and then released. Shortly thereafter, I was aware of the detachment that signals the presence of sleep paralysis. I allowed the upper half of my astral body to rise slightly above the physical one. Just then, I felt the approach of a presence beyond the bedroom door. The presence was strong and unmistakable. Someone was definitely approaching. So he's like half out of his body when this is happening. Holy hell. What's up, Darlene? I stared as a humanoid figure stood motionless in the doorway of our bedroom. I could hardly control myself. Was my wife's uncle paying us a visit, or was it a burglar? I instantly reconnected and sat up physically. The doorway was vacant. I laid back down, willing myself to return to the paralysis, and quickly I did. I rose above my corporeal body again, and the apparition appeared partway through the doorway. Damn, dude, he's getting good at out-of-body stuff, right? He can just go back in and out like that. That's impressive. Was this my wife's uncle? And if it wasn't, then who else could it be? I could not make out the facial features. And even if I could, I might not have recognized him because I'd only met him a couple of times. But seemingly at my request, his spirit was paying us a visit. The entity slowly backed away from the doorway, and I no longer felt its presence. I reconnected, sat up, and reached for my journal. The encounters with my aunt and my wife's uncle reminded me of an incident 20 years earlier, and then I considered what happened to be coincidence, as so many people do. In light of these astral meetings, though, I've decided that this phenomenon represented a glimmering of a much wider universe open to us. On March 15th, 1973, I was an American first class in the United States Air Force, stationed in Wichita Falls. That day, a few fellow servicemen and I decided to spend our free time at Six Flags Over Texas, an amusement park. I love Six Flags. We all boarded the largest roller coaster and prepared for the worst, and about halfway through the ride, through a feeling unlike anything I've ever felt, consumed me. Overwhelming sadness and depression dominated me totally. I could no longer enjoy the remainder of the ride. When I exited the coaster, my friends became immediately aware of my mood. "Are you okay, Al? You don't look so good." "I'm all right, but something's very wrong. Something has happened, and I can feel it," I said. It didn't make sense. I was supposed to be having a good time, not depressing everyone. But the feeling that gripped me was not to be ignored. "I have to call my mother in Los Angeles," I blurted out. I found a public phone and called home. My mother answered, and without pausing to say hello, I desperately inquired, "Mom, what's wrong?" She replied, "Albert, we've been trying to contact you most of the day. Your father just died." Holy shit. It was if, that's intense, man. So like he felt it. Wow. It was as if a subconscious part of me sensed a problem and the conscious part of me knew where to find the answer. The overpowering sadness that I felt made sense now, and I shared the sad news with my friends. "That was weird, Al. How did you know?" "I have no idea," I replied. "No idea." Later that day, I returned to the place where I was living just outside of Shepherd Air Force Base, and as we pulled up, I noticed a note flapping back and forth on the windshield of my car. It was from the Red Cross, stating that it was urgent and that I should contact them at once. I called the number on the note, sure of its purpose. After arriving back in Los Angeles, I found out more about my father's passing. Although repeatedly warned by his physician, my father died from alcoholism. He drank himself to death. Damn, man. Yeah, I know that feeling. My mom did the same thing. Now, in July of 1994, after having experienced what was becoming a series of supernatural encounters, I decided to explore the world of ghosts. In the following 2 years, I attended numerous lectures and classes on esoteric subjects such as mind projection, psychokinetic energy, spoon bending, opening your third eye, lucid dreaming, and ghost hunting. The majority of these were held at the Learning Light Foundation in Anaheim. After attending these classes, I signed up to get the monthly newsletter. In a few months, I received an edition that featured an internationally known psychic and medium. Rose Clifford was said to have acquired, at the age of 16, the capability to communicate with the spirit world. She was now 52 years young. And in the days before my own soul travel, I would have scoffed at mediums or psychics, but the recent encounters had changed all that. I made an appointment to see this medium. Because of her popularity, I had to schedule it 2 weeks in advance. And during that time, I kept telling myself I was not going to tell the medium anything that might give her an opportunity to mumble vague, if true, things about me. The medium greeted me with a starched British accent, and she motioned for me to sit facing her, and then asked to hold my wedding ring. "Say nothing at all." I smiled and handed my ring to her. The medium considered for several minutes, then stated, "There's a man here, a tall man." Okay, I thought, that's pretty generic. "You were his boy," she relayed. This was beginning to sound a little rehearsed. He says he is sorry he left you. Well, I guess I might have wasted my time and money. Oh, this man this man drank a bit, didn't he? Now I began to listen more, but still gave no response. As a matter of fact, his drinking is what killed him. Now she had my full attention, although she did not specifically say it was my father. There's also a grandfather here, and he appears to have had a drinking problem too. This was true about my mother's father, but it was still too ambiguous. That's very interesting, I finally said. I also sense that you are being influenced by or have been in contact with one or two beings of light, she asserted. The medium said she saw me speaking at a podium before a large crowd of people. I did not know it then, but 2 months later I would be asked to speak at a popular men's club to a group of 100 or more. And although I tried to decline the offer, the scheduled speaker developed a severe throat infection, which left me without a way out. And during the entire 1-hour lecture, I kept thinking back to Miss Clifford's prophecy. Who would have thought that a misunderstood occurrence like night paralysis would have changed my life so profoundly? The witches are riding you, is how my grandmother had described it. Has anybody ever heard of that? Is that like an old thing? What's up, Sherry Ann? The witches are riding you? Is that what they used to say about people that got sleep paralysis? Is that where that comes from? The witches are riding you. Because it makes me think about that story that I told when you guys, I'm sure you've heard it. When that witch picked me up on a broom or whatever. When I was little. The witches are riding you is how my grandmother described sleep paralysis. And all my excitement about the out-of-body experiences, I completely forgot that my mother still suffered with the feelings of paralysis, and I wonder if she, too, at the age of 72, could have an astral experience. If nothing else, I could relieve her concerns about what happened to Robert, couldn't I? Did my mother's fear of the witches prevent her from getting out? One day I sat with my mother and shared some of my discoveries about the paralysis. Surprisingly enough, she was very receptive and eager to perform some of her own experiments, and a week or two later she told me the following. Oh, this is cool. I woke up paralyzed and nearly forced my way out of it, she said. I then thought about what you said and relaxed a bit. She then repeated several times, I want to float upwards. And she told me that she began to rise, and as she did, she became aware of something holding her hand. But unlike me, she wasn't fearful, even though this was her first flight. She did, however, feel uncomfortable outside of her body and quickly returned. My cousin Robert had also suffered from feeling paralyzed, but he had died a few years earlier, and I've been told that he was in the paralysis state when he passed on. Catherine, Robert's wife, said her husband was moaning, which was their signal for her to shake him and wake him up. And normally this was enough to rouse him, but Robert soon stopped moaning and slipped away. In the later part of 1994, I spoke with Catherine, and she explained to me that they had been married for 32 years, and Robert had witches riding him for the entire time. All those years, opportunity had been knocking on Robert's door, but he was afraid to answer. Catherine shared with me a story that I believe shows just how close he may have been. Damn, like his whole family was getting sleep paralysis. And they were all like super scared of it. One morning she woke early and left Robert still sleeping in their bed. And their granddaughter, Denise, was visiting and rose from bed early as well. Denise, eager to see if her grandfather was awake, walked into the bedroom and crept over to the bed. Poppy, as she called him, was lying there with his eyes closed, repeatedly moaning. Thinking Robert was dreaming, she left without disturbing him. Catherine heard the barely audible moaning and looked away from the television to see Denise slipping out of the bedroom. "What's that noise?" she asked the child. "Oh, that's just Poppy making that noise," Denise said innocently. Catherine realized that the moaning was Robert's signal to be shaken awake. She ran into the bedroom and shook Robert frantically. Robert woke and immediately complained. That child came into the room, looked into my face, and left without waking me. Oh, hell, how did he know that? She didn't know you wanted to be awakened, defended Catherine. I find it interesting that Denise saw her grandfather lying there asleep, which implies that his eyes were closed. He spoke of her walking into the room, looking at him, then leaving. Could Robert have been peering at her through his third eye? How could he see Denise at all? Was he slightly out of body? Catherine told me that not only did Robert have a problem with riding witches, but so did his father, his brother, and even their daughter. Your daughter? I asked, interested. Yes, Caddy still suffers from that problem, she replied. Damn, that's like 7 people in his family that are having like sleep paralysis. Isn't it? It's like 7 or 8. Later that week, I met with Caddy, who was in her early 50s, and shared practically everything I could remember about my out-of-body experiences. With enthusiasm, I told her that she, too, could soon be off on her own excursions, and after listening to me for a half hour or so, she gazed at me with a rigid expression and remarked, "Why would I want to do that? I just want to know how to reconnect." I was snatched back to reality. Just because out-of-body experiences had become a major part of my life, why would I assume they would be for her, too? I shared with her the little finger trick, apologized for taking up so much of her time, and left. Well, I mean, I'm with him. I would think everybody would want to do it. Especially how considering like his whole family has like sleep paralysis. And all the old people, they've got this superstition that's called the witches are riding you. So they're all afraid of it for the most part. And I don't even think they know they're getting out of body. At first I thought that Caddy's response represented the opinions of just a few, but sadly I've found many people who were unable to at least consider what I was sharing about the out-of-body experiences. Once again, fear acts like a roadblock to higher learning. Caddy reacted as if there was no turning back if she ever decided to follow me, which was far from the truth. But then maybe she's right, because I have come to the realization that there is no turning back for me. Not that I'd want to turn back. Doing so at this point would be like trying to climb a tree that has been cut down long ago. Finally, I'd like to relate a humorous journey through intriguing in its possibilities, or though intriguing in its possibilities, those near and dear to you are not always people. What the hell? See, maybe that's, maybe that's why we don't get a lot of people that want to talk about it. Maybe people don't want to. Because that's what his, according to his experience here, that's what his, I guess, cousin, aunt, whatever, said, what's up, Dan? Why would I want to do that? Because I'm like him, I assume everybody would, if you told them, hey, that sleep paralysis thing that's happening to you, that thing is actually a precursor to a vibrational shift where you can actually get out of your body. I assumed that everybody would want to do that, but maybe he's right. Maybe they don't. I never even thought of that, actually. Like, maybe some people just don't. Maybe he's saying it's because they're afraid, but maybe they just don't care about it. I can't fathom anybody not caring about it, though. It's just weird to me. But maybe he's right. Maybe, sorry, I had just like some weird epiphany, because like maybe some people don't. It's almost like it breaks my heart just saying that. It's weird. As I'm saying it, I'm like, oh, man. Maybe some people really don't. Maybe some people look at the out-of-body experience like flat earth. They're like, yeah, cool, I don't really care. Nah. We got to do the radio station thing here for Fringe FM. We got just a few minutes to take a potty break, but when we come back, remember that he said that I'd like to relate a humorous journey, though intriguing in its possibilities, that those near and dear to you are not always people. What is he talking about? I guess we'll figure that out when we come back. Short break here. Stay with us.
Inside my head, there's a little place left for you. What do you know? What do you know? And all I want is to find out what you're going through. What do I know? Maybe the silence is dangerous.
Talk Radio? You love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for the... And there they go, almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the
right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Look through your children's eyes to see the true magic of a forest. It's a storybook world for them. You look and see a tree. They see the wrinkled face of a wizard with arms outstretched to the sky. They see treasure in pebbles. They see a windy path that could lead to adventure. And they see you, their fearless guide through this fascinating world.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Tombstones climbing up the sky to claim the boredom and the whine of the radiation. the ghost. Just like
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
To that strange power I'm designed like an iron anchor. I'm just a ghost in your stereo.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void Live here on Fringe.fm. Big shout out to the Midnight Ghost in Your Stereo. Love that track. So we're going over Albert Taylor's book here, and it's pretty fascinating. Like I said, Albert's kind of cool. I like his writing style, but also like the fact that it comes from a more open-minded and honest place about what goes on with the soul. Really. It's not something that we discuss so often because we get caught up in the semantics of the out-of-body experience so much that we forget that there might be something to this whole soul journey thing. So before the break, he stated that, what did he say? That not all those that are close to you are always people. That's a fascinating statement. By the way, if any of this rings true to you, you're welcome to call in at 501-777-5631. You can call into the show. So January 11th, 1995, he said, I fell asleep around 10:30 and woke up about 1. Feeling slight vibrations, I did some exercises and slipped into paralysis. With the help of my astral vision, I began to slowly scan the bedroom. Unexpectedly, outside the window, I heard my dog, a German shepherd named Bear, barking frantically. Now, normally Bear sleeps inside the house at night, but evidently one of us forgot to let him in. This is the first time he's mentioned his dog, right? Why was he barking right outside my bedroom window? In the 7 years we'd had him, he'd never done that. I reconnected with my body and sat up. Bear immediately stopped barking. I curiously parted the curtain and looked out of the window. I could see Bear calmly walking back from the other side of the backyard, and I got out of the bed, let him in, and went back to bed, grounded for the rest of the night. Here's the question. Did Bear somehow know I was out of body? He stopped barking the moment I reconnected as if he knew, and started walking away from the window even before I looked out. Are animals sensitive to astral forms or the disembodied life force? Did Bear sense some type of energy field I was generating? Oh, man. For a moment there, I thought he was going to say, he was going to talk about aliens or something. I had no idea he was going to take it there. That's a good question. That's another one of those questions that I don't think we'll ever be able to prove. We can't talk to our animals, not really. So we don't know if they see us when we're out of body. And dogs, especially in my neighborhood, they bark all the freaking time. So maybe he's right. It's just like they're barking at nothing most of the time. This one's called Starlight, Starbright. Here's a quote that he puts in the text. With God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26. The astral body is a wondrous vehicle. It provides a sense of security and stability for the earthbound self by emulating the physical body. It allows us to appear well-dressed, beautiful, handsome, and as tall or as short as our ego wants us to be. But the astral body is not always needed. I believe it's just one more costume that we wear. It appears to serve the same purpose as a child's security blanket. And this first became apparent to me the night I found myself only a pinpoint of consciousness. And this sensation would be repeated on Halloween night of all times the following year. Yet something even more wondrous would take place. I would find my higher self. October 31st, 1994. I meditated for 20 minutes before I fell asleep with my hand on my wife's leg. Shortly thereafter, I was yanked back to full awareness, very much conscious of feeling paralyzed. I sat up astrally and surveyed the bedroom. No third party. I moved to my left towards my wife in a backward sliding motion, but I was dragging something behind me that felt like a deflated inner tube. At that moment, I realized that parts of me were in 3 separate locations. My physical body was flat on its back on the right side of our bed. My astral body was the deflated inner tube dragging behind me, and I was a pinpoint of consciousness. I surveyed all of this in bewilderment, and as I continued to move around my wife's head, I discovered to my amazement that I was not my normal size. I was tiny, and my wife appeared to be a giant. What the hell? I had slid to her left side, staring at her with childlike curiosity. When she suddenly moved, as if I were at the end of a leash, I was instantly jerked back into my bodies, plural. I reconnected and realized that my physical hand was still resting on my wife's leg. And every time she moved, so would my hand, and this had forced me to return to my body. So I laid back, trying not to move, and mentally reached out for the paralysis. I detached from the physical and sat up astrally. I found Otto standing on my right toward the foot of the bed. I smiled and greeted him openly without fear. Otto floated over to the side of the bed and stopped near my pillow. I stared at him with wonderment. I couldn't help but notice the luminescent brilliance of my spiritual friend. The warm, angelical glow that emanated from him was awe-inspiring. Then, without warning, I received mental information that obliterated the last remnants of my religious upbringing. I want to share what I now believe to be an inescapable self-realization. So here we go. My guide, my guardian angel, my automatic pilot, I believe, is my higher self. It stretches far beyond my imagination to fabricate a concept like this one, but I believe the being is me in a higher form of consciousness. An inner part of me somehow understood that this oversoul, as Jane Roberts referred to it, has been with me from my physical beginning. In essence, he has always been with me and always will be. Abruptly, inadvertently, I reconnected. My wife had moved again. I moved physically away from her and attempted to return to the state of paralysis, to no avail. Moving physically had somehow disrupted the continuity of the out-of-body experience, so I laid there completely connected and awake. And in retrospect, I thought, I now know that I am not alone. I will not be alone, nor have I ever been alone. I believe that I am guided by my higher self, which is in turn is guided by all that is, or what's called God. This view was seconded at a recent IONS meeting, when a newcomer sharing her experience for the first time spoke of an expression that her angel guide said to her that left her puzzled. And toward the end of her near-death experience, just before she returned to her body, her spiritual guide shared this insight, quote, "The smaller light follows the larger, and the larger light follows the source." To me, the meaning of this statement was very apparent. The smaller light follows the larger, and the larger light follows the source. Well, as a void walker, I have to say that taking on a belief can be a boundary to conscious exploration, but it also could be a reality. And if we're to believe that everything that's happened to this guy up to this point, I mean, I don't think he's taken any super preconceived notions with him. Although he's quoted about religion and God a few times in here, but I don't know, man. That's interesting. November 7th, 1994. I fell asleep early about 9 and woke at 1. I tossed and turned until 3:30. The interrupted sleep technique, sort of. So I laid there, mentally reaching out for the paralysis until it slowly crept over me like a river of warm honey. I wonder what he means by mentally reaching out for the paralysis, because every time I've gotten into paralysis, I've had to just relax and wait for it. So maybe he knows a method that we don't know. I focused on picking a destination and casually thought of walking in our den, and just like that, I ceased to be in my body in our bedroom and materialized in the den. This blinking out at one location and blinking in at another threw me off guard. I paused and asked myself, am I dreaming? My gaze panned the room as I started to walk through the house, and I floated up about 5 inches and skipped through one of the bedrooms to my 4-year-old son's bedroom door. I paused, walked through the door, and slid over to my son, Devin's bed. I noticed that he had kicked off the blankets I had so carefully tucked him in, and I began to hover over his bed, feeling protective of this little frail being. I left my son's bedroom through the wall, performed a quick patrol of the rest of the house, and then casually thought of my body. As if I were on an invisible conveyor or belt, I headed towards my bedroom. Whoa. What was that? Did y'all hear that? Hey, give me just a second. I'm going to finish. I got to check something out real quick, okay? Live broadcasting. I don't know what that was, but I have to go check it out. Could be an emergency. I don't know. Hold on a second. Be right back. Let me do this. The car door open and it makes that little beeping sound or whatever, that little dingy bell sound, and I was like, oh, someone's in the car. What's up, Domek? Just woke up. Brother, I feel you. I took a nap before the show tonight, and I think I saw you texted, but I think I woke up like 10 minutes before the show. That's the same thing that Monroe said. What is that? What did I say? What did he say that Monroe said? Anyways, this is trippy. So this dude's able to get out of body to the point of like, I'm just jealous. I mean, look, I can get out of body. I would say more than the normal, I guess, average person that wants to try, but I got to figure out like what he's talking about. I want to figure out what he's talking about when he says, what did he say? I long for the paralysis state, or I stretched or reached for the paralysis state. I mean, I'm just saying this, like we'll finish the story here, but in my experience, the paralysis state it just comes with like being completely still and relaxing. But he's developed. Is this guy still alive? Like, we need to get him on the broadcast too, because he's developed some kind of sense of just being able to get there, you know. The silver bullet. That's right, man. I could have swore I heard the car door shut and like that dinging noise, you know. That freaking Honda, bro, is something else. He was in his higher self. Monroe said that oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Monroe said that his higher self was himself too. That's correct. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, see, he says things like, I lay there mentally, reaching out for the paralysis state. And then it slowly crept over me like a river of warm honey. I focused on picking a destination, casually thought of walking out to our den, so he could just reach out for it. And now he's like patrolling his house in his astral body. Imagine you can do that. That's pretty cool. Like, as a man, you don't even have to wake up, because we like to make sure that our domain's safe, Imagine doing that as a dude, where you can just like get out of body and be like, I'm not going to wake my body up because I need it to rest. I'm just going to get out in my astral body, go check out the property for a little bit, make sure everything's cool. I long for the blur. Let's see. I left my son's bedroom through the wall, performed a quick patrol of the rest of the house, and casually thought of my body as if I were an invisible conveyor belt. I headed towards my bedroom. Reconnection was so slightly noticeable, I wasn't sure if it had happened or not. The little finger trick placed me back in control of my body. These seemingly endless variables are amazing. I seem to be able to fly to a location or blink out and blink in. See, now he's teleporting around, right? I can do this to wherever my thoughts are focused. What are we that we can do these wondrous things? During this out-of-body experience, I found that my emotions seemed to be greatly intensified, almost as if I had become the emotion itself. For example, the feeling of love for my son was greatly intensified as I hovered over his bed. Many sages have spoken of love as a source of great light, and this night, I felt I had discovered what they meant. I'm digging this, man. I really am. November 11th, 1994. I became aware of the paralysis, but was not fully focused on the feeling of falling backwards or the shortness of breath that sometimes accompanies it. Before I could file my mental flight plan, I blinked out of my physical body with no destination in mind, and I knew immediately that I was not at the controls and that something was amiss. I blinked into the middle of nowhere. I bet this blinking thing is what Monroe in his book, when he says click, when he goes to different places. I blinked into the middle of nowhere. All around me there was an endless darkness, except directly in front of me there was a single source of bright light. It was as if a blue-white star was burning a hole in the middle of a black velvet curtain. The light radiated outward in long, bright rays, like a crystal comprised of thousands of needle-like spears. The shards penetrated my very soul. I can best describe this experience from the perspective of the reentry heat shield on the Apollo 11 space capsule. As the space capsule's heat shield resisted the extreme temperatures of an Earth reentry, microscopic pieces were vaporized and burned away. The light pierced through me like the capsule's heat shield, and parts of me were burned away, parts I no longer needed. The light was excruciatingly wonderful. All at once, I was wrenched from the light and tossed back into my body. "Are you okay?" my wife asked. "I'm all right," I said, wondering why I'd come back so abruptly. "Well, you were moaning again, so I shook you," she explained. At this point, I tried not to focus on my swift return because I wanted desperately to go back. I didn't have long to wait. I was overcome by paralysis and blinked out. I blinked into the same locale as before, to the same radiant brilliance, and just as before, I felt the unwanted pieces of myself being burned away. Subconsciously, this entire sequence of events was completely familiar and welcome. Oh, what a heavenly light. And then without warning, I was slammed back into my body, hard. "Are you all right?" my wife asked. "Yes, I'm fine," I responded, feeling a little irritated after this. Try as I might, I was not able to return to the light. It seems that a feeling of anger is extremely important to the chain of events leading to an out-of-body experience. Negative emotions are likely to stifle any attempts made to achieve a higher state of consciousness. In my physical life, I have begun to find out that anger is truly a useless tool. We use it knowingly and unknowingly to change persons or situations around us for the better. At least that's the intention. But in truth, it is an instrument of control, dominance, and destruction. Yeah. That, according to the Kabbalists, that anger energy comes from where? It comes from Gebura, or that energetic part of us of severity, right? I can't think of one time when it has made my situation better. Not one. More times than not, it made the situation worse. And if we have enough faith in God that everything is guided anyway, why would we need anger to change it? Faith and anger don't mix. Well, it's an energy that was put into your body so that you could rage out and protect people. I don't think it mixes very well with the out-of-body experience at all. The Dream Police word salad says, yeah. Every time you say that, the Cheap Trick song pops in my head. November 17th, I haven't heard that in a long time. November 17th, 1994. I could barely stay awake, and I read for a while, then fell asleep for the night, or so I thought. My wife woke up 1:30, got up to check on Devin, then got back into bed with a thump. Now I was awake, but I lay there feeling completely abandoned by the Sandman. I tossed and turned until 3:20 a.m. on a weeknight. The thought of driving to work, semi-comatose, did not appeal to me. Well, Al, since you've practically performed the interrupted sleep technique, you might as well top it off with a pre-flight, I thought to myself. Okay, I will. So I was ready to try anything at that point. I completed the pre-flight, disengaged my astral parking brake, and waited. After about 10 minutes, I could feel paralysis creeping up on me. My ears were assaulted by a loud crackling. I focused my thoughts, heard a loud pop, and was literally tossed out of my body. As if I were being summoned, I headed straight for the wall that separates the living room from our bedroom. And without hesitation, I dove through the wall and quickly came to a halt. I had emerged partially into a black, empty void. Ooh. The upper half of my astral self was in the void, and the lower half was still in my bedroom. Wait a minute. I headed straight for the wall that separates the living room from our bedroom, and without hesitation, I dove through the wall and came to a halt. I had emerged partially into a black void. So the upper half of his astral self is in this blackness, and the lower half is still in the bedroom. That's okay. Tell me that wouldn't freak you out. Domek says, I use anger to push through sometimes. Yeah, man, I think it's extremely effective for that too. For sure. To push through certain things that we, I don't know, that we just can't get through just normally. Yeah. This is what I think about that. I mean, I don't want to digress here, but what I think about all that is all of the parts of ourselves, or all the energy parts of ourselves, are useful to some extent, and they're parts of you. Everything's just about balance. If you walk around angry and pissed off all the time, you're imbalanced, and it's not going to help you. But anyways, I think this thing happened to Monroe too, because Monroe would talk about how he would turn or something. I think he talked about like this black hole or this black void kind of thing too. All right, so anyways, dude goes into the wall. He has to stop. Half of his astral body's in the black void and the lower half still in his bedroom. Trippy. There was no sound, surface, or light source out there. Just a nothingness that seemed to stretch in all directions. And although I could not see it, I sensed a barrier of some kind far ahead of me. I ventured forward, only gradually increasing speed, and after what seemed like an eternity, I came to a stop. Turn around before you get lost, a fearful voice insisted. Actually, it's his inside voice that commanded. I looked for a landmark, but the darkness was endless. I thought, what if there's nothing on the other side? And after checking to see if I had changed my orientation, I mentally put myself into reverse and backed out the way I came in, feet first. I felt the surface behind me and backed right through it to my bedroom. Maybe you should try this direction some other time. I turned toward the bedroom door and floated into the hallway. I floated down to the carpet and walked into the living room to examine the wall I should have emerged from earlier. But there was nothing peculiar about the wall on this side, so I decided to perform a quick reconnaissance of the house. I'd have done the same thing. I zipped through the kitchen and into the den, observing nothing out of the ordinary. I turned and retraced my path. I turned the corner and headed towards the living room and almost ran right into Otto. He seemed to have been waiting for me. Another entity stood a few feet away but did not approach us. No words were exchanged, just images and feelings. And all of this seemed to be very familiar to me. It was as if I had been interacting with the two of them in this manner for a long time. And now I sensed that the entity a few feet away was not there because of me, but because of my wife. Could this be her guide or angel? What also occurred to me was that I felt no fear at all. I felt myself being recalled to my body without resisting, and I quickly returned to the physical. The famous line of Franklin D. Roosevelt, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," applies to the soul traveler as well. I wonder how many times a spirit has communicated with my soul unbeknownst to my earthbound self. Is this how these beings guide us during the course of our lives? And is this guidance normally on a subconscious level? I can't help but think about the many times I've suddenly remembered a dream that was somehow suppressed or forgotten. Could this be one of the hurdles we must leap if we are truly to progress spiritually? And this guy thinks like I do. He really does. Nah. Let's see. Monroe's black void was in the between places, but where he encountered beings that pretended to be God as well. Yeah, that's true. I would have investigated that more. Like if I'm out of my body, of course this guy, I wonder if Albert Taylor's had just as many experiences as Monroe. He just didn't write as thoroughly about it, because this is some fascinating stuff. And if it were me, just saying, I would have investigated that black void a little bit. I mean, that's facing a fear, right? So you get out of body, and you learn that all the stuff that you're afraid of, you don't have to be afraid of. And then one day you just roll up on a black void, and you go in there and you sense a barrier, but you can see and feel nothing, and you can travel forever and ever and ever. And there's no way to get out. There's no ending to it. He didn't say much else about it. That's trippy. Dreams are the language of the soul, and because we dream every night, it's important that we learn this language. That is a quote by Ruth Montgomery. Have you ever asked yourself why we dream? Everybody does it. 1/3 of our lives is spent lying on our backs, and during this state of seeming inactivity, the mind is actively at work. Some people believe that dreams are messages. Some people dream that dreams are messages. Some people, let me retry this again. I'm going to start laughing. I hate when this happens. Some people believe that dreams are messages from the subconscious giving us clues to solve our everyday problems. Others believe there is no value in these late night fantasies. I, too, believe dreams are clues to daily existence, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Why is it that during the dream state, people have reported a variety of incidents that seem to link the state of consciousness with the physical world? A woman once told me that she had misplaced her car keys and was unable to locate them for several days. And one night, after searching frantically for them, she just gave up and went to bed. After lying down, she once again thought of her misplaced keys and prayed for assistance before drifting off to sleep. Sometime during the night, it came to her in a dream that her keys were resting inside a multicolored vase. Upon waking the next morning, she remembered the dream and recalled a similar vase in her living room. Leaping from the bed, she grabbed the vase and poured out its contents, and there, to her surprise, were her missing keys. There are numerous tales similar to this one. The Bible, for example, is riddled with tales of people's dreams where they are given insight and solutions to problems. By the way, some of those are my favorite Bible stories if you like reading the Bible for that reason. Especially the Joseph story in the Old Testament, Daniel too, and Nebuchadnezzar. I feel, however, that these types of events are not restricted to an individual's belief in them. In fact, these types of occurrences have transcended religion and have influenced the atheist as well. So what's going on here? During my many experiments with altered states of consciousness, I have experienced a knowing that has been accessible upon leaving the body. However, I do not believe that one must travel outside of the body to tap into this energy source. This seemingly infinite source of energy has been described as a universal consciousness by prominent researchers like Dr. Joseph Murphy. But the universal consciousness, I believe, is the same energy source that psychics and mediums somehow tap into, and residing in this level of consciousness is an inexhaustible amount of information. Depending on an individual's perceptions, accessed information will manifest itself in symbols, images, feelings, and sometimes in an unexplainable knowing. In other cases, the receiver of the data may not be adept at interpreting this information and may require the assistance of a spiritual guide. If there is a significant desire or need for information, the guide may act as a conduit and convey this data to the receiver during a dream. However, I do not believe information extracted from this universal consciousness flows completely unrestricted. It depends on the individual's karmic requirements, and I also do not believe our futures are predetermined or predestined. Based on this premise, I believe our futures are only probable. In other words, what might happen as opposed to what will happen. And depending on the soul's spiritual needs, data received via the universal consciousness will either be denied or severely restricted. Perhaps a superior wisdom has imposed unalterable safeguards or data flow limitations that appear to work in our best interest. You see how he worded that? He kind of worded that like the simulation theory, right? Data flow limitations by the superconscious. The amount of data we can access may be governed by the impact it will have on our Earth life experience. And this brings me back to one of the more exciting types of nocturnal imaging, the lucid dream. And this is defined in the dictionary as, quote, the state or quality of being aware that one is dreaming. Bright with the radiance of intellect, not darkened or confused, clear and distinct awareness. In childhood, as a young adult, I would continually wake up in my dreams, and this was how I described the feeling of being alert and aware. I would then fend off any monsters or creatures that had the misfortune of crossing my path. Now, sometimes a nightmare would become so horrific, it would force me to ask myself, is this a dream? And after this, my mind would wake up while my body remained asleep. I was then capable of changing the plot of the dream. And in short, I became both actor and director. And if that meant I had to assume the identity of Superman, then so be it. All in all, there seemed to be very little I could not do as long as my thoughts remained focused. The key to becoming lucid during a dream begins while you're still awake, while you're still going out, while you are out going about your daily routines. Periodically, just to ask yourself, am I dreaming? Practice this exercise while awake. May condition you to question your state of consciousness while dreaming. It works for me. Oh, thanks, man. What's up, acoustic folk? You know, the thing about this whole thing is he's starting to develop beliefs based on his experiences, which is cool. That's cool, but I would try to stay open. But here's the thing that I think that he said that was interesting. So if we look at our brains like computers, we have two modes of processing in our, let's just look at our brains like computers, processing things. That's all it does. And we have two modes, kind of like the hard drive and random access memory, whatever you want to call it. So we have consciousness and subconsciousness. So consciousness is what's focused on this conversation right now. And most of us, because of our ability, I believe we're like half in and half out anyways. But let's just say the amount we're focused on something varies between people. I won't judge that too much. And then you have the subconscious, which I think the subconscious is taking in everything. Everything. Imagine like there's two processing things and you're playing a video game, right? So you're playing this video game and you need to go from room to room and you're focused on your character and you can only focus on one thing at a time, you know, where you're like the arrow on a mouse, you know, on the screen. But the subconscious is taking in the whole game, everything that can be perceived all at once, but it's not focused on. I hope that makes sense. It's just taking it in. It's not focused on. So then when they go to dream, and she's like, you know what? She's really dialed in, and her focus, remember the dream? Her focus is, I can't find my keys. It's frustrating. I lost my keys or whatever. So in the game, I lost my keys is what she's focused on. But the subconscious remembers her dropping it in the vase or something because it's taken in everything all the time. Like even your peripheral vision, like right now, whatever you're looking at, the subconscious is not only just taking in everything, but I think it has the power to take in all the details of all of it, regardless of where your actual focus is, right? So then when you dream, the subconscious is the way that, I guess, the higher self, whatever you want to call it, speaks to you. So the only way that the subconscious could communicate to her is through the dream, because it can't talk to you like a voice, unless I guess you're schizophrenic or whatever. That's a whole other discussion. But your subconscious can't talk to you in a voice while you're awake and focused on something. It can only throw hints at you through dreams and stuff. And somehow or another, I think that this system, now, hold on, before I go down that road. Now, imagine that, how many people's on the earth right now? You've got like 8 billion at this point. It's something like that. It's a high number. So now you got 8 billion people with two modes of processing power. 8 billion people looking at their reticle mouse, focusing on things, everything they touch, smell, see, and hear, and feel, whatever, their focus. And 8 billion people with subconsciouses taking in all of this detail. So somewhere in the ether, that data is collected, right? If you look at this from a simulation point of view, you could say that that's how it works. But that is only a theory. But I do know that in the dream world, your subconscious talks to you. I've had it yell at me and wake me up. And remember the other night where we were talking about the knocking and stuff? I've had it, literally a voice yelled at me, Joe, take a new direction, that kind of thing. Now, some dreams seem random, almost like the brain is just vomiting stuff. And it makes no sense. But then there are times in between where it's really trying to give you a message and tell you something, you know. Okay, so Albert Taylor goes on to talk about planes of consciousness. We fear the darkness only because we don't know what is there. That's a quote by Robert Monroe. In this chapter, I'd like to share with the reader and future soul traveler some information about what is like to explore multiple levels of consciousness, primarily the astral plane. Albert Taylor's deaf soul traveler. That's just another term for void walker, if you ask me. I haven't read Joseph Murphy's books on the subconscious. Am I close to being right, though? Does it line up with what he's saying? What? I don't know if I'll do that on the air, but I'd like to get into that, actually. So in this chapter, I'd like to share with the reader and future soul traveler some information about what it's like to explore multiple levels of consciousness, primarily the astral plane. And now, as you may know, access to this information has been shrouded with secrecy since the beginning of time. The levels of consciousness, as explained by Eckankar, are the physical, astral, causal, and mental, and etheric planes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Information about these levels has been distorted by countless dogmatic teachings. Now, these levels of consciousness appear to be separated by thin areas of endless darkness or a black void. Each level, guys, don't take this in as a belief, right? Just listen to his experience, because he might be telling the he might be right, he may not be. I like Honda Preludes. Those are cool cars. Good luck finding parts for it, though. And if you do, they're expensive now. These levels of consciousness appear to be separated by thin areas of endless darkness or a black void. Each level possesses its own signature vibration. The physical level vibrates at the lowest rate. In order to transition to higher levels, one must somehow change or increase the vibrations of the soul body. But this is true only above the astral plane. On the astral plane, the soul occupies the astral body. And the only way I've been able to ascend above the astral plane is to leave the astral body behind. And when the astral vehicle has been shed, a lighter, brighter, permanent, non-physical body can be realized. And this remarkable light vehicle has often been referred to as the etheric body. Damn, so he's talking about, this is where it gets confusing, because I always called the astral body the etheric double. But he's saying that he's calling the etheric body something even higher, like a higher realm body. The vast majority of people are afraid to learn more about other levels of consciousness because of fearful condemnations like, it's the work of the devil. In other cases, individuals have been denied access to this ancient wisdom because they were deemed spiritually unqualified. In the past, knowledge of this sort could only be acquired by dedicating months or years of study in remotely isolated ashrams and or monasteries. For those future soul travelers, it's important to acquire as much knowledge as possible, preferably before one sets sail into the world of what I like to call the dear but not departed. It is my aim to share some of this knowledge with the reader, hoping this will assist you in avoiding detours or roadblocks that will surely be encountered. I find it extremely disheartening that due to religious dogma, Western culture has left behind in the quest for spiritual enlightenment. Hindus and Buddhists of Eastern civilizations are generally farther along the path of spiritual advancement. Now, this is only according to Albert Taylor, right? What's up, Zaya? The religions of the East readily accept their spiritual origins and continue to seek further spiritual guidance and awareness. The concept of reincarnation, for example, is not only accepted but encouraged and taught. However, in modern Western society, this concept is only in the embryonic stages of development. And in spite of the widely accepted teachings of Edgar Cayce and the profound insights given by the entity Seth via Jane Roberts, this awareness remains obscure and virtually unexplored. I'd like to provide some reassurance for those who are fearful and a partial roadmap for the more adventurous. You need not be fearful when delving into the many levels of consciousness because they are a natural part of our existence. It's not been easy for me to overcome my own unfounded fears. But deep within myself, I've found my fear to come from or be driven by a basic fight or flight survival instinct. As you probably know, without this survival instinct, we would likely have gone the way of the dinosaur and become extinct. But now, if early humans had not run screaming into their subterranean shelters or massed together to repel a ravenous predator, we would not have survived. This basic survival instinct, however, is a hindrance in exploring the astral plane and beyond. You have to work to get past it. The next thing to understand about the astral plane is that it is not devoid of life. The beings there are quite unlike anything you're familiar with. But don't kid yourself. They're very real. They can be quite different, though. and the level of spiritual enlightenment achieved by these beings may have a great deal, or may vary a great deal. And in addition, just because the life forms there qualify as, quote, spirits and will likely possess far greater capabilities than most of us, it does not mean that all are wise and forthright. When a person has passed on to a higher level of consciousness, that person doesn't automatically become an angel, guide, or spiritual master. I've found that we retain a great many characteristics of who we are in this life, both the positive and the negative. This doesn't mean that these entities should be feared. It just means that not all encounters with them will necessarily be for your higher good. The astral plane, as you may know by now, is just one place we go when our bodies die. However you end up there, be it death or soul travel, you may experience a variety of unexplainable sounds. The Ekis refer to these sounds as the voice of Sugmad, or God. I myself have heard many different sounds during soul travel. Strangely enough, Ekankar has listed many of these sounds on a rather intricate chart. For instance, the sound associated with the astral plane is the roaring of the sea. The causal plane is the tinkling of the bells. The mental plane is the running water, and the etheric is buzzing bees. A key point is that the astral plane may seem like a place to go, but in actuality, it's something you become aware of. The astral plane, like oxygen, permeates the physical plane, and on the astral plane, we unconsciously, aerate a body double, compromised of astral material. And this astral body, like the physical body, serves as a containment vehicle for the soul. As I've mentioned earlier, it provides transitional stability for the newly dead as well as the soul traveler. Nevertheless, it is not permanent, nor is it absolutely needed. I've slipped out of it, leaving it behind like a worn-out pair of coveralls. And if you manage to accomplish this, you will still retain all the simulated senses you have in the physical: sight, sound, touch, and in rare situations, taste. What about smell? What's up, Deacon? What's up, bigots? Sight, sound, touch, and okay. Now, there are many avenues to take while touring the astral plane, but all the while be advised that deceased loved ones and strangers may present themselves with little or no warning. In the beginning, keep your jaunts localized and gradually venturing further as you gain more confidence. Remember, physical locations on this planet and beyond are merely a thought away. You can quickly get in over your head in the blink of an eye, so keep it short and simple. I want to point out that during the out-of-body experience, the power of thought is a tool that must be handled carefully. Anything you can imagine, you will see or experience, and this alone indicates the awesome capabilities of our soul. I've come to believe that thought is just as powerful in the physical as in the astral plane or beyond. And after all, everything around you presently began as a thought in someone's mind. It just didn't manifest instantly as it would have on the astral plane. For example, in early 1992, I was diagnosed with a debilitating disease of multiple sclerosis, better known as MS. And after suffering 2 devastating attacks, I was hospitalized with severe vision and equilibrium problems. My prognosis was not good, and my doctor explained to me that my physical health would likely degrade over the next few years. Shortly after receiving this less than welcome news, I began to have consciously controlled out-of-body experiences. After all, what did I have to lose by trying this method of healing? And to make a long story short, be it coincidence or not, at present I have no physical manifestations of this otherwise crippling disease. And many years have passed since I was first diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and if I choose to believe that the doctors had the final word on my recovery, I most likely would be confined to a wheelchair. But they were wrong. I am healthy and whole today, and I believe that I had chosen to follow my doctor's lead, my thoughts would have affected my body at a cellular level, thus manifesting the MS. The belief in certain religious dogmas is important, but first I should clarify that I would never say what a person should or should not believe. And we as beings of light have a free will, and it is because of this freedom to choose that the soul is capable of spiritual learning and evolving. For the would-be soul traveler, there may exist within you certain religious beliefs that will prevent you from transcending the astral. And when you get past these constraints, you will be able to experience the multiple dimensions above the astral plane, no matter how painful it is. I've had to discard, and I continue to discard, antiquated beliefs that I held dear. And you may find this painfully necessary when searching for your own ultimate truth. I once read a book a friend recommended called Ask Your Angels, and the basic premise is angels have wings, and it also states that everyone has his or her own invisible wings. I wonder if this is a way of providing something for humans to relate to by merging tangible wings with unbelievable creatures such as angels. Does this make them easier to accept, I wonder? The only concern I have with a prejudgment of this sort is this. A person who is unfamiliar with the creative magic that is always present on the astral plane may impose his own visual images onto another being, and this will likely contaminate the journey and prevent the traveler from having a dogma-free experience. I won't pretend that I've seen every type of non-physical entity that may exist, but none that I saw had wings. Hell, I fly without wings. I would think that angels do too. Pretty good point. Damn. See, this is kind of, and this book is almost over. I think there's only like 20 pages left and it's done. Easy, good read, right? That is why in Hermetics, again, thought control must happen before the astral. Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm such a believer in Hermeticism. And keep in mind that there's the original Hermetic teachings like, the moon, the sun, and the stars kind of thing from the Emerald Tablet. And then there's the evolved Hermetic teachings of the Kabbalion, of the laws of Hermeticism. So every damn thing, and I'm not playing, like everything that I've studied lines up with Hermeticism in some kind of way. It just does. But this is the first time I've heard anybody talk about the black void in between the states of vibration. So if you think about radio stations, wouldn't the white noise be kind of like the void? When you're turning radio stations, you're changing frequencies, right? And as you change those frequencies, all you hear is static as the wavelength changes in and out. And as the wavelength changes, and then you pick up perfectly on a radio station, then you hear it. Well, I don't think he's wrong about that. I was thinking about that today while I was painting the house. I killed a spider, and I thought, how can I thought it was a brown recluse, and it's just a reaction, Sorry, little spider. But how can such a little thing just be in and out of consciousness? I mean, its body's so tiny. It's just legs. And in an instant, this thing blinks in and out of consciousness, just like we can. We think we're invincible, but we're really very delicate too, in a sense. Like in an instant, we can blink in and out of this consciousness, just like when you turn the radio dial on a radio station. So maybe that black void that he's talking about is the white noise between radio stations, so to speak, as an analogy, right? Because him, Robert Monroe, I'm pretty sure William Buellman and a few other astral travelers have come in contact with these barriers, they call them, or voids or whatever. It's a trippy thought, man. I mean, I know it sounds woo, but everything literally is some kind of frequency or wavelength. Even the stuff that we do here on this earth, if we pay attention to ourselves, when people talk about, oh, we're in cycles, or I can't get out of this karmic cycle or whatever, it's just another form of a wavelength we haven't turned the station on. Think about the same job that you do over and over again. we go up the wave on the wavelength and everything looks cool until you get to the sucky part and you're like, oh, that sucks. It wasn't what I thought it was. And then you jump to another thing thinking, oh, that's better over there. And you ride the wave and then you get to the hard work and you're like, well, that sucks. So I'll try something else. And you're really not changing radio stations. You're staying on the same frequency because you refuse to do the work, right? It takes work to change the station. So like, even consciousness, I think the universe consciously has created something in this globe that allows us all to be on the same station. It doesn't matter if you're an ant or a being like a human that has a better organic processor, a more beautiful processor. Like we all have that conscious awareness, and that whole radio station's all in this little ball somehow, It's definitely all frequencies. Like I'm fascinated by it, One day we'll have to dig deeper into that, biogeometry, wave frequency, and that side of consciousness and sacred geometry and all that. But and the biggest reason why I say that is because Albert Taylor talked about getting to the paralysis state. When you get to the paralysis state, you vibrate, you hum. Some people hear noises, whatever, but your body vibrates. It's changing frequencies so that your soul can get out and do something, whatever. But like, I have to relax, and not just relax, but stay perfectly still. So this is why learning to meditate, and I forget the name of it, but that form of meditation where you don't move, no matter how itchy things can be or twitchy, and you start to learn just how much your mind's going crazy. Once you can learn to relax and not move, you can get to the paralysis state. But he's talking about, like, I reached out for the paralysis state. Like, he's getting there. He's turning that knob and getting to it quick. And I think with enough practice, once we feel that vibration, each on an individual level, because it could be different for all of us to get to that station. But once you get there and you do it enough, you know how to get there. Metal control. Yeah, there's definitely something to that too. And the metal of alchemies. The secret to alchemy is energetic transmutation. And it has a lot to do with vibration. When they talk about the planets and the different metals and all this other stuff in the alchemy text that are supposed to be hidden, those are just different vibrations too. The 7 ancient planets and all that stuff. Colors, vibrations, all the same thing. And that's why in magic, we call it magic, but we figured out, we use our 5 senses. We use the connection of the right and left brain, through symbol and romance during the ceremony. And we use color and smells and all these different vibrations and symbols to open up our subconscious. And it all dials into like either a manifesting thing, or a transitional or transformative experience, I love it, man. Good stuff. All right. We got to get out of here. Get some good sleep. Get out of body. Make sure your body rests good. Keep everything balanced, because that's where your power is. That's where your health is. I love each and every one of you. Please support the show if you can. If you have been supporting the show, I love you. We love you. Keep it going. No, y'all. Sweet dreams.